Framing
Pretty
this type
sure.
of digital verification procedure as necessary
So I'm watching
under the guise
this
of
now.
protecting children.
It was the next
adult
video
websites.
there, or was close there. The
But the
war
picture
against
starts
the
rapidly
internet by
changing when it
upper
begins moving
echelon.
all the way to something like Spotify, more, such as Reddit. Yes, it turns out that Reddit is also part of this, using a company called Persona to process facial scans and official IDs, which is yet another third party that has critical, confidential, and biometric data on its user base now. What about Twitter? Yes, Twitter as well. This time through a company called Authentics, which they've already done prior to this with the Twitter Blue program to a certain degree. But what if I told you that Authentics, discovered in 2024, had a data breach that persisted for over a year, exposing license photos to the online world? I certainly have my gripes with Twitter. It's a monument of humanity's intellectual failure, to be honest. But previously, if you wanted to, the site could be browsed without giving your sensitive information over to a third party and facial scans to an insecure, unknown company. The framing was adult content websites, pornography. But the practice is everything from Discord to Spotify and all sorts of additional social platforms on top of that. Here's the thing though. While the UK is certainly catalyzing a broader discussion right now online, it's far from the only country doing it. Switching over to Australia, there's a law that's been in the works for years now, broken down across two separate parts, which is perhaps even more invasive. Part 1 is an amendment of the 2021 Online Safety Act, which implements various restrictions on social media, kind of similar when compared to the UK, this time aimed at users under 16 years old instead of 13. But Part 2, which would come into effect in December of 2025, aims to require that search engines verify age through facial scans or official documents before you can actually use them. Remember, most people are on board with the idea that social media needs to be somewhat regulated. The original framing of these laws, at least in the UK and the United States, though I haven't gotten to that part yet, the original framing centers on adult websites. But the slippery slope argument has never appeared more true than it does right now, as the practical reality sets in and we see everything from music to social community platforms and even search engines becoming targets. It's not just Australia either. The Philippines now has a very similar law being proposed, seems to be a watered down version of what Australia is doing in particular, called SB 40, regulating the use of social media platforms by minors. Proposed on July 2nd, where we could see, quote, referencing Australia, taking inspiration from this model and in adherence to our state's declared policy promoting and protecting the mental and emotional well-being of its children, this bill is being proposed to protect Filipino children below 18 years old from online risks and harmful content by prohibiting minors from accessing or using social media platforms.
Anyone want to go for a walk and then have like a fucking AB
from accessing or using social media services.
Or some shit.
So and first, it's the UK, 13 and under, but suddenly creeping far beyond the original scope of what they claimed. Then it's Australia, where the age is now 16, and the attempted verification procedures now encompass search engines, not just Discord and Spotify and Reddit. But then it's the Philippines, and the age is even higher, 18 this time. I don't know about you, but I see a very clear and consistent trend emerging, which isn't stopping where it should stop. All the way across the world, much closer to home for me personally, America obviously has its own version of these laws, right? They've been in development for a while, called KOSA, K-O-S-A, the Kids Online Safety Act. And it's been making its way slowly through the system for quite a while now. But KOSA is a little bit different. There's currently a misconception, though I don't blame anyone for having it, that the Kids Online Safety Act in America will require ID verification to browse websites, similar to the UK or Australia or whatever. But that doesn't actually seem to be the case. As per the language in the bill, it's not the case. However, what it does talk about is a study being required on, quote, the benefits of creating a device or operating system level age verification system, and then below, quote again, what information may need to be collected to create this type of age verification system, end quote. Which means, no, it's not in the bill right now, if you want to technically fact check that idea, but it's probably going to be a thing soon after, almost certainly. Also, just because the bill doesn't require it today, that doesn't mean that websites won't do it sooner. Check this out, from YouTube's own blog, as of just a couple of days ago. Quote, extending our built-in protections to more teens on YouTube. We will use AI to interpret a variety of signals that help us determine whether a user is over or under 18. These signals include the types of videos a user is searching for, the categories of videos they have watched, or the longevity of the account, end quote. That's a bit of a different flavor, sure, but the usage of AI to monitor what you do and determine your age as a result, thereby restricting what you can do or see, It's definitely a little bit further than most people are intending when they agree with the concept of protecting the children from problematic websites. The thing is, though, YouTube already does far more than what most people are ever aware of. Here's another blog post from back in 2023 this time. Quote, working with the advisory committee, we identified categories of content that may be innocuous as a single video, but could be problematic for some teens if viewed in repetition. These categories include content that compares physical features and idealizes some types over others, idealizes specific fitness levels or body weights, or displays social aggression in the form of non-contact fights and intimidation, end quote. Then further down, quote again, we're now limiting repeated recommendations of videos related to those topics for teens in the United States, with more countries to be added over the next year, end quote. Just think about that beyond the surface level perspective of protect the children for a second, right? Content that idealizes specific fitness levels. So like a bodybuilder, a gym bro who's talking about how being ripped is the best thing ever in the world. YouTube appears to be restricting and specifically modifying how much it recommends that type of content already to preserve teen mental health, which then requires the question to be asked, who is making these decisions about what fitness level should be deliberately suppressed? What exactly are we doing here? Are we coddling the feelings of the person who doesn't ever want to put down a fork? Or what's happening with that? Also, because the rabbit hole of what YouTube and other social media companies already do to protect and manipulate is a never-ending free-falling chasm, the United States isn't just one cohesive entity. States have their own, mostly autonomous legal environments. And as evidence of that, we can see House Bill 1126 in Mississippi. This is effectively a digital ID verification law for social media usage already, similar in size and scope to what we see in the UK. And just to be clear, this is an example of what's happening, not the only instance. As of January 2025, Florida passed HB 3, Online Protection for Minors, which not only requires age verification for adult entertainment websites, but also has further implications for social media platforms. You can, of course, circumvent these verification procedures with a VPN, a virtual private network. And obviously one of my channel sponsors is a VPN with a special deal. So I'll link that down below for anyone who has been, or is soon to be affected by any of this. It's an easy and cost-effective solution right now. By the way, they don't keep logs, and they do have a warrant theory if you care about that. But the larger discussion that we do need to have is what happens if the slippery slope argument, right, is correct, which it seems to be. What happens if governments decide to pressure the internet service providers, the ISPs, into blocking VPN services entirely? Look at the search term interest on Google Trends for VPN in the United Kingdom. That's a massive increase in volume, obviously, because it circumvents the age verification stuff that people don't like. But in response, the government already said they're going to be looking, quote, very closely at how VPNs are used, end quote. Speaking to The Guardian, UK Science Secretary Peter Kyle reiterated that the vast majority of adults in the country are playing by the rules, and they had no current plans to outright ban the use of VPNs. Being completely honest here, there is absolutely nothing that stops them from banning commercial service-based VPNs. The concept itself can't really be banned, but the point is that they could make it exponentially more difficult for people to access and use them as a solution to the current ID laws if they want to. Also, not to go on too much of a tangent here, but depending on where the commercial VPN exists that you've chosen to use, there's an intelligence sharing agreement between a bunch of Western countries, so any data that they do have does, yes, probably gets shared between nations, right? When subjected to the proper legal process, that is. Obviously, if there's no logs, they can't share logs, but they could share that you exist as a customer, or otherwise restrict access to comply with the laws. Like I said, VPNs currently circumvent the entire situation, but that isn't necessarily set in stone. Regardless, the initial catalyst might have been the UK, right? This might be the thing that got everyone talking, but there's a coinciding push right now across many separate countries to restrict the anonymity of the internet, focused on far more than just the adult entertainment sector, even though that's what they say it's focused on. The slippery slope is on full display. And once we understand that the gears of government turn very slowly, and that these things already have been worked on for upwards of 3 to 4 years, then we have to realize that the war against the internet isn't just beginning, it's being waged for a long time. We're just now starting to see some of the missiles come down. I don't know where it goes from here, other than increasingly restrictive ID verification procedures across all sorts of websites and platforms that we didn't initially expect, each one requiring their own third-party confirmation, which means more and more of your data spread across more and more companies with an ultimate agenda of who knows. I certainly have theories about that, but that's a different video. That's it. If you want to support the channel, you can check out the links down below. Locals and Patreon, channel memberships, obviously VPN partnership if you're interested, and more, but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, question everything, and have a nice day.
I'm scared. Maybe I'm shadow banned. Maybe I've already been. YouTube nuked again, hahaha. How we go? Fine. Till I get nuked again. Edward Snowden. That's what nuked me. That's like not a thing you're allowed to talk about, I guess. Oh, sorry. I'm not even into it anyway, really, that much. That's there. See, it's still live. Jezza Chronic is live. Guess who's back? The Incredible in brackets. And I added another bit more of a title there. What's going on, black screen? Yeah. Cool. What the fuck? What the fuck? Alright, let's just get out of there. And then start again. See what it does. See what it does. Oh, occult rejects. Knights of the Golden. Huh. That's on like right now.
All the way from here, all the way to the second settlement in Virginia, which was at the falls of the James River in Richmond. So these are very old roads. Specifically, they put this college on this land in between these two roads. So you measure these. This is from the apex down. That is the exact measurement of the side of the Great Pyramid of Giza. From here down to the base, it's the exact same length. The base is the exact same length. What's really cool is from the apex to right here, which is now the bell tower of the Christopher Wren building, named after the co-founder of the Royal Society, Sir Christopher Wren. Supposedly he designed it, but at the very least it was designed with him in mind. So from this point to the bell tower is the exact measurement. If you were standing if you could somehow stand on the floor of the Great Pyramid of Giza and measure straight up to the capstone, that's the exact measurement of that. And what's really interesting is that this hasn't always been a bell tower. Originally, when the building was built, it was the New World's first astronomical observatory. So that was literally the place where learned people would be able to navigate and survey and be able to create a line that goes all the way across the globe and lands directly on the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Shit.
Not only does it land on the Great Pyramid of Giza, it runs exactly down the exact same side as it does back here at the William and Mary Pyramid.
Incredible, yeah. See, like, it's still live. Can't do anything to it though. Rewind, nothing. Just gives you a black screen. How the fuck does that work, bro? How the fuck does that work? Is that like right now? If anyone looks like right now, is there 2 lives? Probably. And I couldn't restart it. But stream interrupted. Reconnect. Like give that screen that pops up. Didn't give me that. Just nuked it, but it's still there. But I guess it's a certain amount of time before you don't redo it, and then it just puts it there. But it will be private, so I have to public it as I do after each one, or they just automatically go to private if I end it. That's how it's set. And it was really interesting. Really interesting. Like, shit's going down. You know, YouTube. Really interesting. The truth is, fucking, like, shit's going down for real. I'm losing heaps of weight. That's not good. But yeah, it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Nobody cares. It doesn't matter.
Have been a coincidence, but the fact that it points straight to the Great Pyramid of Giza, there's no possible way. If you put this line, the end of this line, on any of the other pyramids or the Sphinx, it does not line up and run into this apex perfectly like this. So there's that. Once I found that, I was watching a lot of The Curse of Oak Island, and a really brilliant guy came on there named Petter Almundsen, this like Nordic dude, probably one of Daniel's cousins. And he found a Tree of Life configuration on the island, and they actually had him come to the island, and they kind of walked it out. And at several of the points where the Sephiroth would land, they actually found really significant finds. So I was like, well, let me see if I can find something like that at William and Mary. And just, you can see with an overhead view of the campus, they have tree life configuration has been built into so many different cityscapes. And I see people kind of try to shoehorn them in, and none of them are as perfect as the one at William and Mary. None of them.
I think that's funny, shoehorn them in, because I'm an occultist. I've seen some people.
Yeah, they're all like a little cockeyed and like, yeah. This one is perfect. And when you find out that, you know, this is the original building, the sunken garden here, and then these 6 buildings, the rock garden here, and then the Creme del Pond.
Oh, my scales
Creme del Pond is the original. That's the end of the creek that the original 1607 mission to the New World. That's the end of the first creek that they went up. It's called College Creek now, but it used to be called Archer's Hope until the 1920s. When the Rockefellers came in, it was called Archer's Hope because Sir Gabriel Archer, the big swinging dong of the 1607 mission, he was adamant that this would be where the James Fort be put, but they decided against it. The creek wasn't deep enough to turn the boats around. The Archer's Hope in honor of him forever. And then also on top of that, they in 2010 they finally found Sir Gabriel Archer buried under the Jamestown Church. He's buried the opposite way that Christians are buried. I can't remember if you rise to the east or the west. However it is, he's buried opposite, and he was buried with a little reliquary on this little lead box that when they x-rayed it, it's got fragments of bone, fragments of parchment, and a little vial of liquid. So turns out that Sir Gabriel Archer was a crypto-Catholic or something of the sort, in a time where this was James the First Protestant era. Like, you were getting hung, you were getting run out of the country if you were a Catholic. So not only was he this secret Catholic, but the people over here in 1607 knew about it enough to where they buried him with those kind of Catholic honors. Anyway, Tree of Life. These 6 buildings and the sunken garden were created during the Rockefeller renovation. And the guy that they had, the architect that they had design this area and these buildings was a guy named Charles M. Robinson, a master mason from Virginia, built a lot of buildings, including the mosque, where it's now the Altria Theater in Richmond, which at the time he built it in the 19-teens or 20s was the largest Masonic meeting hall in all of North America. And also, while he happened to be here in Williamsburg, the original 1700s Masons Lodge, the number 6 lodge here in Williamsburg, was just gone. It had they had moved to another building, and he rebuilt it with his own money and then gifted it to the Masons in town. So I find this Tree of Life, where the first Sephiroth is here at the Creme del Pond. The next one is here at this geological garden. you've got pillars 1 and 2, and then they end with the original building being the crown or Kether, right? What's cool is that these 2 pillars
Footwork.
on the Tree of
You
Life
need footwork.
represent the feminine on the left and the masculine on the right, and the female housing was originally on the left in these left 3 buildings, and the male housing was in the right. And then the whole point there is at Kether or crown on the Tree of Life, it is a marriage of the masculine and the feminine. And what better name or point for the crown Sephiroth than a building that is named after King developed William and Mary. Francis
Nuked
Nicholson
again.
was also the governor of Nova Scotia directly after being the governor of Virginia. And he had a short period as the governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony.
Like serious, just give me a fucking break, YouTube. Don't you dare do that spinny fucking wheel thing, man. Just give me a fucking break, YouTube. Don't you dare do that spinny fucking wheel thing, man. It's fun now. Fucking spinny wheel meat.
Supposed to get all the silver off of this sunken ship and take it all to England. Well, he only showed up with 3 of the 6 tons and said that they couldn't get it all off, and when they went back, they couldn't find it. One of the best theories at the Curse of Oak Island that's been put forward is that the silver, the 3 tons of silver that was missing from the Phipps expedition ended up there. And so I always found the connection interesting that the governor,
It's a trainer.
who was the governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, where Phipps was out of, was the governor when Phipps went on his expedition. And then Phipps replaced that governor, and that governor came down to Virginia, became the governor of Virginia, and then after being the governor of Virginia, went up to Nova Scotia. And then the only thing we know about Francis Nicholson's family is that he had a sister, and that she lived in Canada, and her last name was Phipps. So that's interesting. So I drew a line coming from this Sephiroth through the crown Sephiroth, and wondered where it would end up, and it ends up in Nova Scotia and directly on Oak Island. Not only does it end up on Oak Island, but it touches
I'll be allowed to cook
a
it.
massive boulder
Fucking YouTube.
that they've proven to be hand-hewn boulders that create, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them that create what they call Nolan's Cross. And so coming through those 2 Sephiroth and going to Oak Island, you land directly on one of the boulders of Nolan's Cross. So of course I was like, well, maybe there's a Nolan's Cross configuration at William and Mary. And so the first thing I did was look up the dimensions of Nolan's Cross. And it's 145 feet from the first point. There's a really weird statue that sits right in the middle of the Wren Yard, and it is Lord Botetourt. Lord Botetourt was a very early Mason at the number 6 Lodge. He built, commissioned and had built the Worshipful Master's chair that still exists, and you can go see. This statue had originally been placed at the Capitol building and then moved to William and Mary, and then hidden for a little while during the Revolution, and then again during the Civil War. Some guy cut its head off at some point, but it's always come back to this specific spot, which is exactly 145 feet from the front door of the original building. The other thing was each of these arms of the cross are 360 feet. It's exactly 360 feet from the door to the edge of these oldest roads in basically in the country. Now, what's weird was when I found Nolan's Cross, I didn't put it together with the originally I didn't put it together with the Tree of Life. And when I did the Tree of Life, you can kind of see you've got Tree of Life should have 10 Sephiroth, and then there's a hidden Sephiroth. Okay, so all the buildings represent a Sephiroth, right? But then there's a Sephiroth that's supposed to land right here and right here. And so when I did the Tree of Life, I was like, oh wow, they cross in the exact spot. Well, you can see on Nolan's Cross that there's a boulder here and there's a boulder here, and from the cross section to the first to E, it's 429 feet. Well, it just happens to be exactly 429 feet to where these two lines of the tree of
So it
light
went for
cross,
2 hours and,
and
2
then
minutes.
it's 293 feet from E to F, and it's exactly 293 feet from this Sephiroth here to this Sephiroth. And you'll see later on, once all my crazy Charlie Day strings get on here, everything crosses through the middle, through this Sephiroth, which is Tippereth, which means beauty. So then
You
I
put all
ran.
this together by yourself?
I did. I'm a psychopath.
What the fuck
Yeah.
is
Well, it's
this?
been like-
This is crazy.
Yeah. It's been like 8 years of me just picking apart, and I was, I've been a chef.
He's fine. He did this shit in 2 weeks. He's like, autistic.
I mean, just all these little diagrams you made and like all the connections and stuff. Like,
I was like, man,
Under 100, or whatever it is. That's where I got cut off. Yeah. What the fuck? That's where I got cut off. Anonymous official 5 minutes ago. Edward Snowden cries. Let's play some old school. It will be mandatory. I don't know where. Haven't it? Boom, gone. Edward Snowden. Don't know what happened to Edward Snowden. Boom, gone. Okay. Pretty interesting, isn't it? Boom, gone. Am I flying? Yeah. Pretty interesting, isn't it? Wow. Am I flying? One watching when it should be two. Am I flying?
The monument is laid out on a scale of 666. So, like, every measurement is 666, which of course means one thing to one group.
I'm gonna cook some eggs.
Personally, for me,
Back in a sec.
it means what it means because I come from a Christian worldview. But then, of course, with Masons who are putting all this together, and they've kind of fetishized Solomon, and so it means a whole lot of things to Solomon, including the 666 talents he was paid in tax, the Star of Renfan, and so one of the early podcasts that we did is we started going around and measuring things on the campus, and we came up with just dozens of 666 measurements. The most interesting
so
one.
when you say campus, just to clarify,
Yeah.
What kind of campus is, like, people go to school here, or like?
Oh, yeah. So this is technically it's the second oldest college in the country.
Oh, it's a college. Okay.
Yeah, it's the College of William and Mary, and it was actually penned in 1618, and so had they been able to get their crap together and build the building, they'd have been the first. But Harvard technically beat them with a crappy little building before. But this building right here, the Crown or Kether, the Christopher Wren building, is the oldest the oldest college building that's been in continuous use in the United States. Second oldest college in the United States. It's an Ivy League school. It's what they call a public Ivy, where Yale and Harvard are private schools. William and Mary went public part of the way through its existence, and it's an incredible school, incredible law school, right in the heart of and this is where I grew up. I grew up right down the street from here. So,
Is there any type of, tell me to fuck off if you don't think so, but are there any type of rumors about, like, some sinister stuff running through this school?
well, this school has the highest suicide rate of any
Okay.
campus in the country. It is like the
Alright,
most
here we
haunted
go.
campus in
Sure
the
it
country.
is.
You can see on foggy nights, you can see this building right here, the one that I talked about that the road runs right up against. That's called the Bradfordton Building. And it was basically an indoctrination school for Native Americans. They originally, they basically treated it almost Game of Thrones style hostage. Like, we're going to take, they'd go and they'd steal kids from tribes, and then they put them in this school under the guise of teaching them Christianity and how to speak English. And if they did that, they had some reassurance that this area wouldn't get raided because they basically had hostages. And they did it by force in the beginning, and then they changed it to basically running it into a program, which was, a give and take of we're gonna teach your kids, don't shoot us up kind of thing. And so on the sunken garden here in the middle, on foggy nights, tons of people have reported seeing like Native Americans like dancing and things like that. The head of Blackbeard is seen floating up and down Duke of Gloucester Street. It's, I can't put my finger specifically on anything super like nefarious, other than this was a very early place where they imbued with Masonic symbolism, and I do believe that Masonry is just the next step in kind of a control system that was laid down by bloodline families that needed to rule over people. And I really think it was just a rebranding for the Stuart dynasty and a new way of holding control. So there's that. So me and Daniel started measuring the campus, and it's 666 feet halfway through here, 666 feet to here. It's the same way all the way around. And we just had this triangle, but I had always noticed there's a road that runs down here and a road that runs down here. And there's special symbolism within Masonry about a diamond next to two triangles. I can't remember what it was. We looked it up. But what we found interesting was they bent these buildings to stay with this. These two triangles here are exactly 666 feet by 666 feet by 666 feet, which means that this triangle is completely encoded with other triangles that are 666 feet. And I was like, I don't even know if that's a thing, but I did find it interesting that, of course, the dead center of it lines up right with that Sephiroth of Tippereth. And so I started looking up esoteric meanings of triangles within triangles, and I ran into something I never heard of before, and it's called the Tetractys, or the tetrad, or the Tetractys of the Decad, which is a Pythagorean used in the for the Greeks. It was used in the secret worship of Pythagoreanism, which was a thing I didn't know. It was a cult around the Pythagorean teachings. And then also that Kabbalah uses the exact same symbol to also represent the tree. It works in conjunction with the tree of life. And so I started learning about the Tetractys. And when I came along so each of these rows, you can kind of see here that with the Greeks, it's a point, and then 3 points, and then 4 points. And it's specific in both Pythagorean occultism and then in Kabbalah. But each of those rows have meanings. And so the first row has a meaning. I'm trying to remember. It's the third row. And I can't see it because the little slide thing is in my way. But it means beauty. The third row means beauty. And I didn't realize this until I was doing a podcast on this, and I went back to the Tetractys and realized that the third row of the Tetractys here at William and Mary runs directly across this line. You got 1, 2, 3, which makes it the third row, and the very center point of the third row sits right on the Sephiroth, that means beauty, on the tree of life. And then, of course, this line of the Tetractys means beauty in conjunction with the tree of life. So running off of those
This is fucked up. I can't believe this.
running
This is
off
crazy.
running off these same 666 measurements, this sunken garden, which was built by that architect Charles M. Robinson, the exact measurement from corner to corner is 666 both ways, which also crosses coincidentally in that same Sephiroth. And then you've got this diamond here. So you go from the crown Sephiroth over to, there is a statue of the founder of the college, James Blair. That's 666 feet, down to the bottom Sephiroth, which is the Creme del Pond and Bridge, 666 feet. Right up here, you can't see him, but there is a little alcove and a statue of Thomas Jefferson, and he's actually facing and looking towards the court, equidistant between the busts of the Tylers and this building. It's there's a name for it, but if you speak out loud in this court, your voice is like disembodied. It doesn't sound like it's coming out of. It may just be just an architectural like anomaly, but they've noticed it, and there's a little plaque there talking about it. But if you speak out loud here, it sounds like your voice is coming back at you from like all around.
Nuked like twice.
Thomas Jefferson, and he's actually facing and looking towards the court. Equidistant between the busts of the Tylers.
They love it. They love it.
It sounds like your voice is coming back at you from like all around.
Nuked like twice.
Thomas Jefferson.
Nuked twice. Anyway, my eggs are nearly ready. Got fucking 4 bits of toast as well with it.
It's really strange. And then I also have a configuration where I believe that the entire campus is laid out to mimic a Masonic lodge, in that the Wren building would be the worshipful master, because this way is east, and this is where the worshipful master would sit. The first kind of academic building is over here on this left side, and that is where in the lodge the secretary would sit, and then the chaplain would sit to the left hand of the worshipful master. And this wing of the Wren building here is the Wren Chapel. And then, of course, you've got over here on the right side, which would be, I'm thinking, the south side of a, which, and all of this is aligned to the same compass points. But over here on the right side of a Masonic lodge, you would have, right here in the middle, you would have, in a lodge building, you would have the warden, either junior or senior warden of the South. And right where you would have that, you do have that statue of Thomas Jefferson, who was a Mason. And then what really clinched it for me was these guys over here. Because the guy who sits outside, sword drawn, on the outside wall of a Masonic lodge is referred to as a Tyler. It's spelled Tiler. So literally in this same position, you have a family of Tylers sitting out here. And then also some of these buildings align with different points in the lodge. Also in the middle of the floor of the Tesseract floor of a Masonic lodge, right here is where you would have the altar.
I'm gonna do my own nuke.
The Bible sits, the square compass sits on the open Bible. Their altar is right in the middle, and then obviously
pretty good stream again. The occult rejects
facing towards the inside. What's really interesting is that the Wren Chapel, which is contained in this wing of the Wren building, is set up like no chapel of its time.
Perfect.
Chapel, you have a pulpit in the front, and then you have kind of stadium seating coming back. I mean, you've got the Bruton Parish Church a block away that is an example of that. It's not like that in this chapel. It's set up exactly like a Masonic lodge, where the benches are all facing inside towards the aisle. So you almost have a mirroring of this being a Masonic lodge, and then the whole landscape being a Masonic lodge. I think, maybe not. And then there's this weird lightning bolt, again, 666 feet from this Sephiroth over to this strange, there's a cemetery in the middle of the college. and
Peace
it's a
out.
little cemetery for like
Stalkers.
1 or 2 guys. A guy named Yule,
I saw you
who
there.
was really
And you were
important to
fucked
the
off.
college. He opened it back up after
3
the Civil
cowards.
War.
3
And
cowards.
then again,
And
666
didn't
feet from him
comment
to
and fucked off. You 3.
Thomas Jefferson, and
Good
then
luck.
again
Have a good day.
666 feet from
Have a good
Jefferson
day.
to the Cradle Pond. So I throw down the Oak Island
You good? Are you okay, bro?
Tree of Life, and then throw the Tesseract over, or the Tetractus over top of it. And what's interesting is where I've got the Tetractus on Oak Island, you cannot put that size triangle on this island in any other direction. It only fits on this island in this way.
That's
So I was
good
like,
that I
oh,
saved
that
up.
could be something or it could be nothing. Except for, again, it landed right
Delayed
here. The dead center of it lands right
gratification.
here on Tippereth, or the
Figure it out.
Sephiroth for beauty. And then I was like, well, let me find the center of the island. So I make my own little compass. And the exact dead center of Oak Island is right here in the center where Tippereth is and the Tetractus line of beauty is. And this is a true northeast compass. The exact center of Oak Island. So we've got the line that goes from the Williamsburg Tree of Life that runs all the way to Oak Island, which is here, but it keeps going.
Where'd Uncle
And,
Stoner go? Where'd Uncle Stoner
you can
go?
see it
Hey,
runs
shout
through
out
and keeps
Uncle
going.
Stoner.
And where it ends up is in the north of London, and specifically on this piece of land, and specifically right over top of this thing called the Round Tower. And this
Fuck,
this
give you a roundhouse.
building and this property
roundhouse
is known
kick to the
as,
basement.
Bruce Castle.
Whoops.
And so
Whoops.
the
Sorry.
Bruce
Oh, I
Castle
didn't mean that to
is
joke.
named that because this
I'm just joking.
land
Just fucking around. You know. Fucking around, bro.
belonged to Robert the Bruce and the Bruce family of Scotland, of William Wallace Braveheart lore, right? So this land, they lost this land obviously when Robert the Bruce gains Scotland's independence. Also, Robert the Bruce family
Wasn't I
comes
just
from
talking about that the other day? I was
French,
just talking about that the other day.
the Northern French,
Freedom.
who come from the Merovingian and the Plantagenets. This round tower here that is property, they believe is a well because it goes really deep into the ground. And also this is the oldest, they don't know when this was built, but they know that this is the absolute oldest construction on this site. So it goes through there. And this is the only thing it hits in London. I've gone over this line with a fine-tooth comb and it hits nothing else interesting. I thought for sure it was going to go over like a statue of Francis Bacon, or like, actually it does. It goes through one thing. The building that they filmed Hogwarts, it goes over that building as well. I don't think that means anything, but yeah.
That definitely means something to me.
So it keeps going and it heads over, goes straight through Istanbul, and finally it lands here in Antakya, which is Antioch, Turkey. And not only does it go to Antioch, a very significant point during the Crusades, but it lands directly on the front door of St. Peter.
Sorry, we're cutting that. So that's weird. I've liked it. There's 2, there's 1. Yeah, that's what it does. That's what it does.
Of St. Peter
That's what it does. We're going back live to wherever they're upside down.
Church, and that would help them get out of it, right? So they go and they dig and dig and dig, and nobody can find it.
I need a lift.
And then this guy Peter
I need a lift.
jumps down
Hey,
in the hole
Fratel.
and finds
Shout out
it
Fratel.
immediately.
Yeah, I
There was
can
a
have that
bunch of
lift
people
now.
documented
Can you give me that lift now?
that He
FM?
jumped down there wearing only like a tunic, just a shirt, and actually the bishop that was there claims, he was like, I did see like a piece of iron in there, but I didn't think it was anything. And then he got down there and picked it up, and it was definitely the spearhead. So what ends up happening is so on June 28th, like I said, they were besieged, starving. Following further instructions issued by Peter Bartholomew. That's
Yeah, no, he didn't. We were even trying to get him to do it, and he really wouldn't. So now, like, when people re-listen to this, even though it was the old stuff, it's fuck it.
Who's the dude?
You know, I can vouch for that. The first time he showed
It's a
me
dude.
some of the Williamsburg measurements was out there at a restaurant, and you know, he pulled it up on his phone. I checked this out. This triangle
Dude, right.
we did an episode about this recently. All of this other stuff was new to me, and it was like I hadn't even seen the two
It's a dude. He's the dude.
All right, you want to get into the other thing? You want to get into the boring, just lame, regular history of something that happened? But it's not. It's not.
I got nuked, but I was just over there.
Where we started
For the third time.
So we were talking about topics that we were going to cover, and I said, you know, since we're doing little known Virginia history, since I was 4 years old,
I'm the dude.
a long time ago, I would go camping in the mountains of Virginia, the Shenandoah Valley, and there's a place where you cross over the mountains.
Shout out you three.
And there's a little
2
plaque
or 1 or whatever.
commemorating what's called the expedition of the Knights of the Golden Horseshoe, which very basically is just an expedition set up in 1716, I think,
The dude.
by the then Virginia Governor
The dude.
Spotswood, trying to explore a new pathway into the western part of Virginia. So basically, as Virginia was being developed from the coast.
Anyway, I don't like dude anyway. Dude means dude.
You know, people were building settlements,
Who wants to be called dude
plantations,
anyway?
etc., etc. But there
unless
was
it's the
the
positive
mountains
one,
were the ultimate natural
there
barrier
one?
there, and people were always
Maybe
trying to
it's like
find what's the
linguistical
easiest way to
cookery.
get over the mountains. We know the Mississippi River is out there somewhere.
The
At this
dude.
time, the English are very much feeling threatened by the French coming down from Canada from the north, or the Spanish coming up from the south. And they're trying to figure out the best way to get to the Mississippi River. which they know
No one's
is there
brave enough
somewhere
to actually drop a
defend
comment,
against
are they? They can't do
incursions
it.
from the French
It's not
and
in them.
Spanish. So Governor Spotswood just puts together this little expedition of, I guess at the time would have been considered
The
sort of
utmost
New World
epitome
notables
of cowardice.
anyway. They weren't notable.
Welcome
in
to the Oz
Europe
420
and
community,
World War,
Australia.
they would have been notable,
Dun, dun, dun,
people
dun,
in
dun,
Virginia.
with your host, Hook.
And they get a
and
couple of
Julian.
rangers together, they get some pack animals
And
together,
Jezza.
and they set off.
And everybody else that I've fucking said.
From Williamsburg through Richmond out to a community called Germanna, and then that's sort of the last outpost of civilization as far as they're concerned. The only people who have been out farther than that in any real sense are rangers, and they set off for the mountains, and they ultimately
And Aussie Ganja
follow the
Project.
river up to this pass in the mountains, climb to the top, and they figure out this is the best
Bud
path
Lee.
to get over into what is now known as the Shenandoah Valley. But what is interesting about that, what I thought,
And that's
was
it, pretty
interesting
much.
from the
Yeah, welcome to the Oz
historical
420 crew.
perspective
It's like 4 people.
They
or
had
whatever.
a guy.
I don't
that was
know, I
with
lost
them,
count.
and this is
And I didn't
where
even
Ernie will come
count
later,
that many.
He was
Shit.
one of the officers on the expedition was this Huguenot Lieutenant John Fontaine, and he sort of documented this whole trip. So that's how we know what happened on this trip. And there's lots of detail in his documentation. I mean, there's one day where a guy has his horse spooked and he falls off and is bitten by a rattlesnake, and that guy's got to go back to base camp. There's documentation about what they ate.
What if
every
I ever
night
see
when
a
they
snake?
stopped.
Probably not.
These guys also
If I have to
drank,
leave,
like a shit
probably
ton,
not.
so they're constantly stopping
It'd
and
be
writing
nice
down
to
everything
see
that
one.
they consumed.
But that's like in
the
summer,
camp, and it's
right?
kind of funny to read because
Hmm.
we had 6 kegs of ale, and then we had 14 bottles of wine, and then we opened the sherry. And I mean, you're like, how in the world?
I got
did these
3
guys
months
drink
of
this much
cookery.
and then wake up the next morning, get on a horse in wool
3
clothing,
months of
and then
cookery.
keep traveling west.
And that's what they documented the best. They keep like
Anyway.
documenting.
Don't know if
the
I'm
different
staying or
liquors
going,
that they
but-
have with them. And
you know
it's
what I mean?
preposterous. It's
Yeah,
like
That's enough to
really
fucking
punch,
drive a man up the fucking wall, bro.
ale and champagne.
Nobody was dehydrated as a motherfucker
I'm
on
sure they
this
all
voyage.
You
Everybody was
wonder,
dehydrated.
how do they make this journey? And they don't say anything about the people that are carrying all these things. They just talk
That was
about
mad sandwich.
what it is that
Alright,
they're eating
time for
the
sex.
entire time out there. But they finally get to the crest of this.
Sorry, I'm
this
just a smart
ridge.
ass, you
They
know.
take this pass up, which is now
Somebody has to
where,
be.
the main road goes through the mountains still in Virginia,
I know where that is.
and that's where you can see this historical marker. But one of the things that struck me as most interesting about this story is people don't think about Virginia as a place where you might look over like an African savanna and see thousands of buffalo and thousands of deer and all of these wild animals just immediately
That's my body
visible
goes.
to
to the naked eye from that distance, but that's one of the things that they talk about in this account of breaching the mountains is all
Don't
of
have
this
any?
wildlife
This is
that
my
was
smoke.
so abundant at that time.
This is the salt.
And also
too.
the
This is the
Shenandoah
water.
Valley now is largely full of forest.
Water.
There are a few remaining farms that are still farmed in that part of Virginia today, but at that time there were no farms. It was just a clean, clear grassland like you would see in a nature documentary of an African savanna. And that's something that we've kind of forgotten about in Virginia history that I always thought was interesting. But essentially, they get to the top of this mountain, and Governor Spotswood has prepared a gift for all of the men that went along with him on this expedition. And it's a golden horseshoe encrusted with diamonds, as some accounts of the
I'm pretty sure
there's some
tobacco is
discrepancy
like pretty
about that
bad.
as well. Nobody's ever actually
This
seen
is
one.
better.
There's one
Right
account
along
from
that.
a family member
Fucking love
who
tobacco.
claimed that they remember seeing
Fucking
it
love
from a great-great-great-grandfather or whatever that had it in the home. And it looked like a golden horseshoe. It had some diamond or diamond-like studs encrusted onto it as well. But all of these things were given to each member of the expedition
They came
with
and
a
they
Latin
went.
inscription that read,
came and they went.
"It's very pleasing to cross the mountains in this way." That is what the thing said.
That's interesting. It's just like
So, you know, the guys eat and drink their
Right, I
way
was
all the way
getting-
up there. They find this pass through the mountains. They
We all
say,
know
good
what's going
job.
on there.
We got to the top of the
Don't
mountain
we?
range. We found the pass. Now
You
we
have
have
to
to
be
go back
like-
home. They ate and drank
Yeah.
all the way back home.
It's like,
And seemingly
people
that's kind of where the story
watching
ends.
when I get
Ultimately,
nuked.
knowing this route that transcends the
and then no one
mountains
watching.
leads to further
And now it's fine
development in Virginia, but ultimately throughout the whole country, because when you have more immigrants coming from Ireland, Scotland, Germany,
swinging this
they
around,
generally
see if we can
arrive
get
in
myself
Pennsylvania or
nuked
New
again.
York, follow the Shenandoah Valley down through this area, and then disperse out into Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, Missouri, and so on and so forth out through the rest of the country. So this little expedition by the small group of people ultimately sort of broke open a lot of exploration to the west in the United States. So kind of pivotal for American history for some people. And that was sort of where I thought the story was interesting. And there you go. Somebody popped it into the chat, the original Latin translation there. If somebody's better at Latin than I am, they can read that. But
Yeah, that
well,
was
that's
me.
kind of cool. This is little known.
Hey, so that you
Yeah, this is little known Virginia history. So that's kind of a cool story we should talk about. And then, you know, I tell Ernie this is like one of these little known Virginia history stories we should talk about. And then he starts calling me like the morning we're supposed to get together and record this. And he's like, dude, you're not going to believe all this other stuff that I found. And then I think that's where I'll flip it over.
I can almost hear him say that.
All right. So, yeah, I was when he said he wanted to do this one, I kind of took a cursory look at it, and I was like, "Oh, there's not going to be anything in here. There's just a bunch of dudes
It's
who
boring. It's just really
got drunk on a trail, like, and then came home. But I got looking into it, and I think it runs deeper, considering the year that they did it and what was going on around that time. But also some of the things, well, one thing that they did in particular at the end of the journey, and then what the like kind of company became known as and was dubbed as, which was the Knights of the Golden Horseshoe, which was a really lofty name for a bunch of dudes who like went on a camping trip. Really lofty present to give these guys all these golden horseshoes. And when he was talking about discrepancies, and I'll talk about this in a minute too, but like from what I've found, each of these horseshoes that he gave was different, and I've kind of tied that into the different jewels and the different degrees and the different offices of Freemasonry. And this all happens in 1716, and we know that 1717 was the year that the
Where's money? Money.
Grand Lodge.
Why money?
of
Money's
London
420
was
AU. Are
basically
you still around, bro?
the year of the coming out party of
I haven't heard from you for a
Freemasonry.
while. You okay, bro?
And so my overarching kind of theory on this is that this was almost the American, kind of the American coming out party, kind of the first Masonic ritual that happened. And I'll wait till the end to tell you what kind of solidified that for me. Again, because it's me and I feel like I've got to explain some history before I get into it, I'm going to burn through a real quick connection of these families and the people kind of involved. It's important to state that the connection between the Merovingians, the Plantagenets, the Stuarts, the Jacobites, the Huguenots, the south of France, and all those factions later connecting in the formation of Freemasonry. So sort of a line of succession of mysteries from biblical times to the Merovingians through the Stuarts and resulting in Freemasonry and I think America as a free nation. Important to note that this line from Merovingian to Stuart, I believe, cared far less about religion as they did using religion and denomination to claim the divine right of kings and to maintain power. So we're still talking very early people in this colony. The governor who headed up this expedition is Governor Spotswood. He was the governor immediately after Francis Nicholson, the guy who went up to Nova Scotia. So it may not seem like it, but the south of France plays heavily into this, I think. You start off in the south of France with the Merovingians, and they're the people who claim the Christ bloodline and a divine right to rule. They're ruling the south of France between the 5th and 8th centuries. They get kind of infiltrated and taken over by the Carolingian dynasty, and that it was referred to the Carolingian dynasty because that's a dynasty that kind of gets solidified with Charlemagne. Contrary to popular belief, Charlemagne was also Merovingian. They say the Merovingian line stopped there, but it didn't, because Charlemagne's mother was the daughter of somebody. Anyway, he's part of the Charlemagne is part of the direct line of King Clovis I, which was the beginning of the Merovingian dynasty. His daughter married Rorgon, an ancestor of the Plantagenets. Henry Muslim pirates. So together, the Templars and the Knights of Malta came together using their fleets to protect Sicily from the Muslim pirates. And they flew a skull and crossbones that ended up becoming referred to as the Jolly Rogers.
Just when I'm explaining the
King
we have
Roger the Jolly
five.
of
Fifth one.
Sicily.
And we fixed it.
And then that kind of advances forward.
5 nukings and the 1 nuking.
Lends some credence to the idea that possibly these rogue Templars who made it out alive kind of became the pirates from the 1300s all the way up through the golden age of piracy.
That's insane.
Or at least their
That's fucking
ideals,
insane.
their kind of egalitarian, vote on everything ideals. When you look at the Tortuga Pirate Republic and things like that, those things all smack of this kind of all for one for all
when no one's even viewing
Templar ideal. So then the Stuarts come into power. They begin in the late 1300s in Scotland. And then by the 1600s, they finally get their first foot in the door with King James I in England. And this is really where some of my overarching theory of all my research in William and Mary and Williamsburg in America comes into play, because they had a hell of a time maintaining power. They had a hell of a time.
I'm waiting for the
getting
accru
into power
sharpener that I've got
in Scotland. And you got Robert the Bruce.
And my thing yesterday,
and,
look, I didn't get a card. Wonder who's got the card.
Has to die in the revolution against England before they finally win their independence.
Where's my fucking card?
And then all the way up through Queen Elizabeth.
Where's my Ozpost fucking card?
Stronger claims to the English throne, especially considering, Mary Queen of Scots, who Queen Elizabeth I, Francis Bacon's mother, had Mary Queen of Scots' head cut off, and Mary Queen of Scots had a much better claim to the throne because
And what's
Her
with the
mother
what's with the shit
was
not
the
working?
sister
Like,
of,
God, press it 5 times and,
uh,
like, fucking
King,
let the whole
what was
neighborhood
it?
know?
Henry VIII, yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Plantagenets are not directly descended from the
6
first Norman kings.
kings.
They inherited the throne through this connection. Speculated that when the Templars left La Rochelle, inherited the throne through this connection. Speculated that when the Templars left La Rochelle with the treasure, they sailed to North America to hide it. Now remember, there is a connection between the Stuarts and the Knights Templar. It's hotly
I don't
debated,
get it.
but I think there's decent
That didn't
evidence
even
for it.
stop.
In 1314,
That was
towards
spinning.
the end
but I got
of the
nuked.
revolution,
That didn't spin, but I got
Scotland
nuked.
trying to get its independence. In 1314, an unnamed cavalry came to the aid of Robert the Bruce when he was outnumbered to win independence. That cavalry,
And then
sporting
into
a
my tin
conspicuous Templar cross,
for walking
caused so
boots.
much fear to the English that they ran from the battlefield. This connects the Templars to Scotland, and specifically the Stuarts, who were in power later in England from 1603 to 1714, right around the time the folks with possible Templar connections started coming to the New World. Then you've got the Huguenots, which almost takes a turn, but I think it supports my theory that these, I believe the Merovingians in that bloodline was more occulted and did not care about Catholicism or Protestantism. I believe the people in their courts and their people, yes, they identified with these different denominations and whatnot, but if you look through the Stuart line, what you see is a Catholic, a hardcore Catholic monarch who outlaws all the Protestants, and then you'll turn around and get a Protestant monarch who's a Stuart, who's
Pack 'em up.
cool with the Catholics hanging around,
Pack 'em up.
but they're not going to be in power, and then vice versa all the way through the Stuart line. And I think that kind of shows that they did not, again, they didn't care at that level about that religion in particular. I think all they cared about was their divine right to rule, and I think the writing was on the wall for them. That they needed to find someplace else to maintain this line. So the Huguenots jump up in the 1600s, and they kind of, their base of operations is La Rochelle, France. So in this
Cheers.
same place that the
Legend.
Merovingians, the Plantagenets, the Carolinians, the Templars are all in this Protestant Calvinist group of French people pop up, and they're heavily in La Rochelle until Louis XIV makes it illegal to be a Protestant, and then they have to kind of scatter all over the world. And that's going on throughout the 1600s into the early 1700s. And then right around that time in the early 1700s, you end up with the Jacobite Revolution. Now, you get the Glorious Revolution, where the Stuart kings are deposed, and they bring in King William and Queen Mary, and they become the monarchs of England, right? Well, Queen Mary was actually of the Stuart line, so she's still holding that Merovingian line, and so they're still in there, but again, they're seeing the need for maintaining their line somewhere else. That was a little bit quick of a lot of years of history there, but
Just
it
amazing.
was just to kind of, we're going to get into on this expedition the connections between people from a lot of these different backgrounds, and I think it's important to connect all those backgrounds going all the way back to the Merovingian dynasty. So the guy that Daniel was talking about, who recorded everything on the journey, was a guy named John Fontaine. He was only 23 at the time of the expedition. He kept detailed journals, which were later published by a descendant, but only in part. She held back, or so it's said, she held back large portions, and people don't know why, of the 1716 expedition. They were a Huguenot family. John Fontaine comes from a Huguenot family that fled France before his birth to England, where he was born, and then to Ireland. Now, while they were in England, his father and brother were actually kidnapped by French pirates and held for ransom, and that's why they end up immigrating to Ireland for safety, and that'll come back in a really weird way later. He comes to Virginia, John Fontaine, in 1714 at the age of 23, supposedly to tour the country and buy a plantation, and we only know that from his father's autobiography. But his reasoning, like, again, he kept detailed journals of the journey over to America. He kept detailed journals of everything he did when he was in America, of the expeditions that he went on and whatnot. But he never in his diaries states the reason for coming to
This is
to
how
the
I like
New
to use
World.
it. This is just
He spends only 4 years in the colony. And all but 6 weeks, he's in Virginia. He went to New York for 6 weeks to meet with the new governor. Now, this is a Huguenot refugee from Ireland who obviously has enough family money to just come over and buy a plantation, or so he said he was over here for, or what his dad said he was over here for. But he's not plugged in that we can see to the movers and shakers in the colony at all.
That's my thing.
But out of the 4 years, 6 weeks he does go up to New York to meet the new New York governor, who happened to be a playwright and a general, and also happened to be kidnapped by French pirates on his way to become the governor of Virginia. But he was held by the French pirates so long that they got a new governor for Virginia, and then when he showed up, they were like, you could just have New York. But that's not the weirdest thing about this New York governor, because in 1715, he writes his first play, which is the first play to be written in the colonies. And it's about political rivals who have a secret society that meet in the basement of the New York governor's mansion, and they plot to kidnap him, the governor. That's it. That's all that's really known about this play, but it's just a ridiculous that this guy shows up in America and then cruises straight up to New York to chat with this guy who also was kidnapped by French pirates, who writes a play about secret societies. Okay, so when he lands in Virginia, he lands near North Cumberland County on the Potomac, which is northern. He and the captain disembark and immediately go to church, right? And they just so happen to run into a woman named Mary Hughes, a.k.a. Mary Ball Hughes, who was the grandmother of George Washington, who was already a pretty important person in the colony at that time. And she just happened to be attending church outside her parish. She was miles and miles away from the church that she usually goes to. And she just happens to be at that same church and just so happened to have brought 2 extra horses with her. So she invites the captain and John Fontaine back to her home at Cherry Point for dinner. They stay with her for the night, and then immediately the next morning get on the sloop and go straight to Williamsburg. They land exactly at the back of William and Mary, where that creek is that I told you. Several different landings, but they decide to land right there. And they meet with Governor Spotswood. Again, this guy is kind of a nobody from all we can gather. He's a Huguenot refugee, and he immediately arrives in Williamsburg and gets an audience with the governor.
Fully nukes me.
Now, at this time, Spotswood, this is 1715, and Governor Spotswood has just been sent one of his cousins, okay? Now, this is a time when William and Mary are the king and queen, and everybody's supposed to be Protestant, and the Stuarts are a thing of the past. Now we're in the Hanoverian dynasty, and everybody's supposed to love them, right? But Spotswood's cousin gets sent to him because in 1715, the Jacobites, who were the followers of the Stuart line, they create a revolution, and it goes to hell, and everybody is kind of exiled and running for their lives. And Governor Spotswood, his cousin, gets sent to him to kind of hide. Well, he gets put in charge of this community called Germana by his cousin Spotswood as an overseer. Supposedly, Spotswood was embarrassed by his cousins and their involvement in the Jacobite Revolution. But again, he puts them in charge of this little colony called Germana on the outskirts, which ends up later on becoming base camp for this expedition, right? A couple months later, they send him the other cousin, which is the brother of the first one, George Hume, and he became a surveyor through William and Mary and goes straight to Germana as well. Now, Germana is interesting, this base camp that they start at, because it was basically an indentured servant work camp built by Governor Spotswood for a group of Protestant Germans from the Siegen area of Germany who were sent over in 1714, the same year that Fontaine came over, by a baron of Switzerland to mine for silver. I found a bit of a connection and possibly like a money, could have been a possible money laundering scheme for that Sir William Phipps silver treasure that they had to figure out a way to account for 3 tons of silver. During the gold rush, that happened a lot where people would steal a bunch of gold and then they would take it out to the gold rush, out to where they were finding all the gold, have it all melted down into bars, and then they could bring it back to the east and say, hey, we found this in the dirt. And so Spotswood creating this basically slave camp out in the woods, mining for silver, it seemed like a plausible idea to kind of, there's no evidence that they did, that's just an aside. This town or settlement lies on the Rappahannock River, 30 miles above the falls at Fredericksburg, and 30 miles from any inhabitants. The Germans live miserably, according to legend. Oh, the Siegen area, again, where these Germans come from, according to legend, was the scene of the last stand of the final dozen Knights Templar, who were said to have fought to the death there in 1312 after 5 years of relentless persecution by Francis King Philip and continued by the Archbishop of Mainz. Now,
there's something I want to ask you real quick.
Yeah.
You just have so much shit anyway. Is there a church in New York that you might specify at some point that's like in New York City?
A church?
Yeah. I was just wondering. Because there was a church I covered in New York City.
No, I don't know. Why? Tell me.
There was, I think there was some sort of order that I think you said ended up turning into the KKK.
Oh, the Knights of the Golden Circle. So these
no,
are
I think it was before that, actually. It was something that was on another, that I covered a church in New York. I went there and they had catacombs.
Okay.
And it's just like around the same time of these dates you're mentioning. They were being built over there, and they had like these, they were like almost like, they were called like militias to protect the church.
It was
There was issues.
It was the
with
cat fucking
supposed
around.
people in the area not liking Catholics. Well, that's where it was.
Okay.
But I don't think because when you said, I can't remember what it was. It was an order that you mentioned.
I guess
Well, right during that
It was supposed to be a
Tune in.
church that was supposed to protect
Maybe
the church,
next time.
but then 50 years later, it's turning into the KKK. So what the fuck? Is
Well,
Northern
right
Day
during
Legends.
that
Cheers
time,
for the whatever.
you do have
that
a
was,
Jacobite
if that's what it was.
revolution that
Legends.
happened in New York.
Fucking with
And
my
yes,
shit.
that
Or
was
YouTube
part
just
of
fucking
the
with my shit.
situation. That's why I was wondering.
Or
It's
people just
absolutely
come in
weird
and
talking
this
about
is-
go, I
shit
guess.
that
Yeah,
seems
this
Two or
is
three
around
people come in
1750.
all at the same time.
It was
They
kind
go.
of like a coordinated European Jacobite revolution, and then one pops off in New York. And actually, that same Governor
cruising
Nicholson, I forgot,
legends.
he was also
Got a couple of
he
things
was
we
the
gotta do,
governor
I think.
of New York at the
Maybe.
time.
Get
Is
some
he the
shit.
church in New York that I'm
Ready.
talking about is St. Peter's?
Fucking
So when you mentioned St.
Oh, that's
Peter's,
weird.
oh, that's
Jezza
not
Chronic.
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
Might take
so
a bite. No,
it
so
actually does make sense
But
if
also
you
stay-
follow the
stay
through
magical,
line that I
stay
follow
toasty.
in that the
Yeah.
Jacobites were Scottish. They follow this
that,
Merovingian line. There's a
77
connection
minutes.
to the Templars, right? The Templars, there's a